One of the more productive edge rushers this season, but also one of my favorites to watch so far, has been Tennessee's Joshua Josephs, listed at 6'3", 240 pounds, but plays with fantastic length. What seems to be a lot of really good play strength as well that translates to both being a run defender and as a pass rusher. This is one of my favorites to watch because he feels so developmental, which is normal for an edge rusher coming out of the draft, but still a lot of the grades I don't feel like matches how I actually feel about betting on this player moving forward. So let's jump right into the 4-year senior out of Tennessee that has statistically been very productive so far this season. 20 hurries, 4 sacks, following up a season last year where he was listed with 17 hurries, 2 sacks according to Pro Football Focus. He also has a 7.5% run stop win rate, which is above average, like a 21% pass rush win rate, which is well above average at his position so far this season. But again, he still feels so developmental. However, there's a lot that I like about his game because of the way that he plays, the effort that he plays with, the toughness, the run support that he gives. And let's start there first with some of this run support, because you do feel flashes of real football intelligence, recognizing wide zone run schemes when they're trying to get outside, his ability on the front side to not get trapped inside and step outside, that way he has to force it back in. He flashes all of those abilities, but then also some of the quickness at the line of scrimmage as well to create negatives, get behind the line of scrimmage, recognize and find creases upfield. And that's where his contact balance begins to come into play, utilizing that length, keeping himself free, and getting upfield just like we see here against Mississippi State to kind of grease the edge. And I see it by what his hip flexibility brings to the table. You'll see some looseness there in the torso where he can really turn the corner but also maintain a lot of speed as he's working around the arc. And he does this as well with, again, really nice contact balance. You see his cans continue to work, but he continues to close airspace. And I think his body control is pretty surprising. Get upfield really quickly with great explosiveness off the line of scrimmage, and then immediately get himself controlled into entry points, or like we see here around the top of the arc, to kind of flatten the edge a bit, sink his weight a little bit at the top as well, and really lean into some of that flexibility in the hips to continue racing the edge. So starting there first, I really do think he has very good get off. His first step quickness, his first step explosion is probably a better way to put it. I think it's really strong from what I've seen so far this season. Great juice out of his stance. He fires off the ball. I think he's got good reactive quickness. The only reason that's not better for me is because I think it's hit and miss. There are occasions where he doesn't feel like he's off the line as quickly as others. Sometimes he feels like he's pretty late off the line. Other times there feels like there's efficiency getting off the ball, especially as a run defender, where he's kind of moving in place. He's not actually attacking anywhere, and it feels like that kind of delay could give him problems in the NFL, but he's got a very explosive upfield push when he gets into it. He also has an occasional pads getting upright out of his stance, especially I think when he has to move laterally or kind of adjust where he's getting off the ball, where his pads will rise immediately off the ball. It's not all the time, but they will flash that. Switched up lower body, feet have instant juice. He has good stride depth when he's working upfield, which makes him a real threat and a presence upfield. I wish he would tap into more inside counters off of that or inside wins. I don't feel like that's nearly enough for the kind of threat that he can pose upfield, which makes him ultimately very predictable as a pass rusher. But he gets downhill in space in a hurry, and he can drop the upper body weight that he has to create some speed to power. Again, for me, it's really about turning the corner for him, as we've seen, because he's kind of able to flatten the edge a little bit. I don't think he has elite bend, but what he does have is the ability to sink body control when he's working through the top of the rush. His long arms are effective. They do impact pass rush lanes. He also has skip steps that can be pretty effective as well. His agility, to me, is nothing special. Uses footwork, get upfield. He can avoid taking shots and getting latched when working upfield. In and out footwork, which can be effective as well. Skipping outside, he connects it well with his hand placement, and typically those things are on schedule, though again, it gets a little bit predictable. He's typically on schedule, and he can stick and get downhill with real speed to power. I don't think he has outstanding knockback, but he does transition that speed to power, I think, pretty well, especially as a run defender. It kind of shows up more so than anything. However, that being said, some of the in and out shake just doesn't feel overly effective. You don't feel a lot of like true agility or just fluidity when working his inside moves. You feel like it's misplaced when he's working that in and out footwork. He has the leg drive to continue working when he's working the top of the rush, and he can get through and he can flatten and he can kind of take on some half-man opportunities and find success to at least step the quarterback up in the pocket. Way more often than not, he's not, getting squeezed out of the play. Talk about guys with pretty good get-offs like we saw, or good kick steps we saw with Alabama. He was just less effective at really threatening the edge, and because he didn't feel like he had a natural ability to threaten the inside or threaten going through you consistently, it just felt like he stalled out a lot earlier in that game where the edge wasn't opening up as consistently, and he was getting jarred out of the pocket. To attack an oversetting offensive tackle just doesn't seem polished whatsoever. It doesn't feel like he actually has a great plan to do that at this point. his main setup kind of stems from, like pressing upfield and maybe giving you a little bit of an outside step to create a little bit more space from an offensive tackle. That way he can try to get around the arc. You'll get sudden changes like that where you'll kind of change the spacing of how he's rushing. But for the most part, he feels like a very one-pace type of pass rusher. Doesn't feel like there's a ton of shiftiness to his game, which is a little bit disappointing based on the way that he plays. He's got real stop and start burst, but there doesn't feel like there's a lot of fluidity that he kind of connects together with some of his movements there. So I think he does just need to change up his initial entry more consistently, because right now he's just too predictable rushing at one pace. But again, can loosen up that upper body, loosen the torso, continue to hand battle. He does have an ability to sink, and he does have an ability to kind of flatten the edge by some of the footwork that he can carry together and quickly gather his body control. That way he can win. If his hand placement was a little bit less predictable, I think he'd be more impactful as well. It feels like you're going to get guys that are going to kind of punch him in the chest and throw off some reps. He loves to kind of go to a push-pull move against short sets, but again, it's a little bit predictable, so sometimes it just gets thrown off before it even gets started. He has the length to get into it. He has the contact balance. He has the ankle bend to do it and the ankle strength, but he just doesn't get there consistently, and I don't think as of now he'd get there consistently in the NFL. Frame does tend to stay open a little bit, which he also makes himself kind of a target of getting knocked off his pass rush opportunity. Initial punch doesn't have as much pop as you would expect initially. I think that he can create real power through the hips, but he doesn't initially always carry the best pop into that first attack. He doesn't feel overwhelming. Working laterally, I don't think he has the looseness to cover just a lot of natural depth when you're talking about stunting as a pass rusher. But what he does do is he quickly gets up to speed. So if his footwork is efficient, he can get downhill in a hurry, and that is nice when he's looping around, or even if he was crashing, he can kind of get up to speed in a hurry. So needs to be more decisive at times with his upfield push. Sometimes I don't feel like he's always selling it to an offensive tackle as aggressively as he potentially could. His suddenness, again, is a little bit underwhelming, especially when offensive tackles have a very good initial kick step, which kind of slows down his rep and kind of cuts it off. And he also becomes a little bit choppy in terms of at the top of the rush when he's not as crisp, when he's trying to work through his footwork. Everything doesn't feel as dynamic when he's working in the inside. It feels like he loses a bit of pace as well. Club move, that's kind of nice, where his footwork will extend out and he'll create some real depth working on the outside. And again, he can be tough to connect with because of some of the stop and start explosion that he does carry with very ready hands that are ready to attack. And he also brings a little bit as a coverage piece too. Like, he's a nice athlete that can run in space, and I feel like you really see his awareness here. I mean, there's times where, he'll get under, the number 2 receiver, then he'll race out to the flat and get under the number 1 receiver, and his job just doesn't end there, and he continues to work. I think you see a lot of that presence about him as a coverage piece. And then as a run game, maybe the area where you're excited because you're saying, man, there's a lot of upside here, but he's also still impactful against the run. There's no doubt that he's going to give you the effort. I think he has, for kind of a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker is what he feels like. He still does have the play strength, and I think the toughness to be able to step in and handle run responsibilities pretty well in time, as long as his technique can kind of come along with it. Because right now he's got some slipperiness for take on to blocks. His closing burst to set the edge is legit. He can get a field close in a hurry. I think he quickly gets his footwork kind of acclimated. That way he can settle into blocks with pretty good leverage on entry. He doesn't feel like he's out of place. The biggest thing would be there just speeding up the process in general, because again, sometimes I feel like he gets into blocks a little bit late. He's got those strong ankles, so he can kind of really hold an edge. And he's got a short trigger that gets him upfield for the run scheme. I just think he can be a little bit efficient with that early footwork, but he quickly gathers his feet to work into entry. He will jump out of run lanes occasionally, and I also think some of the consistency of a first step or that lateral quickness gets him in trouble. There were times where, like, backside outside zone, you would see that he wouldn't necessarily be able to maintain his gap and he'd get kind of cut off, and that would be an issue. But on the front side, he was much more effective when he was able to typically actually just set the edge. He's outside run setups. He gives support. You saw it against Kentucky. He has great quickness on the edge, and this is where his body control shines, when he's able to press upfield, redirect, get into blocks, and set an edge, right? And he creates a nice little anchor to his game with some of the body positioning that he plays with. His upper hand body placement, where he gets connection, and then he runs his feet through contact constantly. His length is very impactful here. I think he's actually pretty good at shedding blocks to this point. He opens up a lot of opportunities for himself with that stop-start, with the leverage at the point of attack, with some hip power that he can create and kind of jolt into contact. The way that he splits gaps by using his hands to clear out, continuing to work through contact, continuing to run his feet, be pretty nice at getting slippery through creases, but also using his hands to create some space. The biggest issue will be just speeding up the process, right? Because at times it feels like he's becoming a catcher and he's kind of just taking on the blocks, and his first punch to run to pass transition isn't always as dynamic as you would hope for. There's some real pop to his game, so you can go push-pull. That's in there. You can get a pop and get upfield, but I think that the whole transition as a whole just needs to be more fluid, kind of working through it. But he can definitely shed through blocks. Gets a little bit upright at times, kind of ducks his head. You'll see this as a bull rusher too, where he gets a little bit hunched over rather than being completely polished. But I thought through the season this got more clean as I watched, where he didn't feel as much of that, just felt a little bit more consistent than anything. He just needs to consistently get his hips square to taking on these blocks and create force from the ground because at times that just doesn't always match up. You'll see some pop when he gets through his hips and that body control that he can kind of muster together, but at the same time, you also see examples where he doesn't feel that forceful or that impactful at the point of attack, where he's not really creating much through the ground. It's kind of just all his upper body, but he does have that lockout entry. He has the leverage to put it together. For me, I bet on him more than I bet on the grades that I actually have for the piece. Like, I think he has very good first step explosion. It's not elite, but it's very good to this point, and I think that there's more in there from a consistency perspective. His play strength is good, especially for his size, maybe even better than that. His pass rush, I think, is good. I just don't think it's elite right now. I don't think there's enough ways to win, and I don't think he's as crafty as you would like to see. Like, I wish there was a little bit more fluidity and kind of just natural setup to his game. It doesn't feel like there's as much of that. It feels like he has a way to win, and if he can, he will, and he can dominate. But there's other examples where he feels like he'll stall for pretty long periods of time because he doesn't have a lot to get into there. His shed ability, probably the most upside projectable thing for me is it's good right now, but it's very translatable to the next level, and I think that could really carry some weight as he moves forward for him, as well as good hand usage, so sometimes it doesn't always connect. I thought that this got a lot better, and he connects it well to what his plan is. His body control's in a good spot. His agility's fine. It's not great. It's okay at this point for me. He tackles pretty darn well. He always works to get back into the play. I mean, he'll miss some tackles, but he does work back into the play, so it's fine, and he can work between the tackles and be successful. He's a pretty smart player. I like him in space. I like his ability to match up with the run scheme. Just needs to play a little bit faster, right? And his discipline could kind of tie into that to make that a little bit better. His motor's in a good spot. I don't think he's elite at anything right now, which is kind of the biggest knock to being a first-round pick. Like, what does he stand out? Where does he stand out? I don't really know where he stands out. I think he's a above-average pass rusher, and he can be an above-average run defender, I think, at some point as a pass rusher in the NFL. I don't expect him to be, like, a good pass rusher immediately. I think it's going to take even more time there unless you're playing against, like, backups. So, for me, I don't think he's elite in any area, which is the biggest problem, especially thinking about him as a first-round pick. But I also think that he's a guy that I think it'd be worth taking a bet on. I think a lot of teams would like to bet on a kind of piece like this that has the measurables, that has the kind of toughness to his game, and that shows that he can tap into a lot of things. It's just getting him there. And I think the way that he wins does fit today's NFL pretty darn well. There's a lot of versatility to his game. So that's where I'm at. I kind of came in, it was like a 6 spot, but I ended up kind of finishing at a 6.2 here. It's kind of where I'm at, which is maybe not a first-round pick, maybe borderline end of the first round as of now, maybe. But at that point, it would kind of just have to fit the team. But also, he has that ability to potentially raise a lot higher. He also has the ability to not get there, right? Because you just don't feel like there's an elite trait, at least for me right now, to his game. Production, yes. Elite trait, I don't feel it right now. It just has to get there. So that's where I'm at with Joshua Joseph. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll continue watching, continue to change minds on things like this. But with that being said, who do you want to see next time? Let me know. Thank you for watching.